So let's continue on with adding Sock Monkey to this picture. I did do a little bit more touching up on his edges and made another selection around him and worked on it in quick mask mode, and then I converted that selection into a mask that you see over here. And let's use the puppet warp tool now to kind of change his perspective and make it look like he's walking down the street. So I've talked about going under edit, transform, and there are a lot of great transformations here, such as the warp or perspective. We already use scale a lot to be able to make different objects look like they fit in. Another one that is really useful is the puppet warp. And when I click on puppet warp, it's going to create a mesh all around. Now I did this on the wrong layer, sorry. I have to be on the layer that has Sock Monkey. And we're going to go back up. Let's do that again. And it's going to create a mesh around him. And what I can do is double click with this icon that looks like a tack, and I'm creating anchor points around him. And then I can use those anchor points to kind of click and drag, just like I did really with the pen tool. And I'm going to reshape him a little bit. I have to be on one of those intersecting lines here. I'm just going to add a couple more anchor points. Anchor him here though, so that part doesn't move. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm just going to change the perspective. I'm going to make this leg a little bit smaller, and this one maybe extend a little bit out, and kind of tilt him a bit. So this may or may not be the best example of it. I really just wanted to show you what you can do with Puppet Warp and how you can use that. And always when you're working with these tools, it's okay as long as you're making small transformations. If you do anything too much, even Photoshop will have a hard time. Okay, so now kind of looks like he's this leg is a little bit behind and this one is sticking out. So the next thing I want to do is I want to replace the sky here. So I'm going to take him off for a second, and you can see I have a layer that has, this is my main background, and underneath that I have a different sky. So now this should be familiar from our last project, but I'm going to be on the layer that has the blue sky, and I'll take my magic wand tool and just kind of click going around trying to get most of the sky selected, and then I can always go and into my quick mask mode and touch this up. I'm making a selection of the sky. That's pretty good for now. And then on that layer, I'm going to go down to the mask icon and convert that selection into a mask. And I have to invert it. So I double click the mask to get the panel and I invert it. And now the sky of that layer is masked out and it shows the sky from underneath. And I'll just close this right now. And if I need to go and touch it up, I'm just going to click on that layer mask and make sure I'm using black. Now, I've mentioned to a few of you about using textured brushes, and this could be a nice example if I want to use a textured brush down here to be able to kind of go around the tree areas here. So just keep in mind when you're working with the brushes, you don't always have to use ones that are have a round diameter or square. There are some textured brushes here that can be really useful. So I can just go and kind of touch up the edges here and get rid of whatever I want for my mask. Now I'm trying to go through these quickly, but I would expect you to spend more time on these selections. I'm just trying to make the videos go faster. Okay, so great. So now I've replaced the sky. What else can I do? Well, Sock Monkey really needs a shadow. So to make a drop shadow for him, yes, under FX there is the drop shadow, but let's talk about, so you can go and explore that yourself, and that's pretty basic. Let's talk about how to make a custom shadow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection of Sock Monkey, and I'm on my layer, and I'm on the thumbnail for that layer, and I'm going to control click onto it, and that selected Sock Monkey. I'm now going to move him over onto another layer by creating a new layer, and I'm going to fill that with black. I'm just going to switch my foreground color, and I'll use the keyboard shortcut Alt Backspace. And I don't see it because he's right underneath. So I'm going to take my Move tool, and I'm going to move him out a little bit. And now I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, And I think I'm going to try skew, but you could also try perspective. What we want is to extend this shadow all the way back. I'm going to try to get it to follow the lines like the trees here. So I'm going to really make it long. And I'm going to commit to that. And then I'm going to do Control T so I can rotate it more like the lines that are already existing here. I'm trying to follow the light that's already here. And commit to that. And two more things that I want to do. Well, Control D to deselect. I want to really lower the opacity of that layer. And I'm going to switch my blending mode to multiply. So it kind of blends with the layer that's underneath. And lower that opacity even more. And do a little bit more rotation so he really kind of falls in with the exact same kind of pattern that I have already going on here. The last thing is I might have to just manually go and touch this up. So if it looks like there should be a little bit of shadow here, I'm just going to paint that in and just make sure that my paintbrush is at a really low opacity, and I could go in and just kind of paint in little parts of the shadow that looks like it should be there, and if it wasn't there. And last, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a blur to this shadow. So I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur, and there are lots of fun types of blurs here. You could try the motion blur. I'm going to just use a Gaussian blur, and it was already set to 9 pixels, and that's pretty good. So now that starts to look a lot better. He has a shadow here. The next thing I need to do is to work on the lighting. So I do have some burn and dodge tools over here that are pretty good, but they are destructive. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how you can do burning and dodging, so making parts of your image darker or brighter, but in a non-destructive manner.